Thank you, Chair Shaheen and Ranking Member Moran, for holding this hearing. Ambassador Tai, it's good to see you today. I'd like to talk with you about the China tariffs that were put in place by the previous administration, and specifically, I'd like to talk about the negotiating leverage that those tariffs provide. I can tell you from personal experience that when those tariffs were imposed on China, that it was felt around the world. It demonstrated, particularly to Japan, the third largest economy in the world, that we were serious about leveling the playing field for American producers. It helped us open significant new markets for American agriculture, and importantly, it allowed us to establish a very high standard digital trade agreement. Ambassador Tai, I understand that China is not living up to the commitments that it's made under Phase 1. You've talked about that at length. My question for you is, wouldn't removing these tariffs simply encourage more bad behavior? What kind of message would it send to China?
Well, I appreciate that question very much, Senator Hagerty, because at USTR, we are responsible for the formulation of American trade policy and guiding the U.S. economy through challenges and opportunities that are presented today, but really to set up the American economy for success in the future. The China tariffs are, in my view, a significant piece of leverage, and a trade negotiator never walks away from leverage. The question for us, and this is something that we have done in the Biden administration with respect to a number of different Section 301 investigations and tariff actions, is how do you convert this leverage into a strategic program that will strengthen American competitiveness and defend our interests in a global economy in which China will continue to play. We need to use our tools more effectively. We need new tools. We need to bring an entirely new approach. And I think that all of those things are built on the back of the tools that we have in our hands right now.
I certainly think sustaining leverage from the standpoint of a business person, which I've been all my life, is a critical factor here. I hear the argument that it'll have an impact on inflation. Look, inflation didn't take off when the tariffs were imposed. It stayed, at or below 2% when the tariffs were originally imposed. So I think that's a false argument, and I appreciate the fact that you appreciate the leverage that you have and encourage you to use it. I'd like to turn now to the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, so-called IPEF. You've met with representatives from the 13 countries that participate in the Indo-Pacific Framework. And many experts have argued that the IPEF is too vague, it lacks substance, and perhaps that was the price of convincing more countries to join the framework. But as you focus on making IPEF more substantive, I urge you to build on the successes of our nation's prior engagements in Asia. And specifically, I'd like to talk about my experience when I was U.S. Ambassador to Japan as we negotiated the U.S.-Japan Digital Trade Agreement. It's comprehensive, it's a high standard agreement that addresses digital barriers, and I think it holds great potential. So Ambassador Tai, I'd like to ask you your thoughts and whether you've considered looking at the U.S.-Japan Digital Trade Agreement and perhaps using its provisions, parts thereof that have been fully negotiated, as a standalone sector-specific trade agreement in the region.
Well, Senator Hagerty, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I think that in this administration we are picking up on those relationships, and I do agree that there's a lot of energy in this region and also worldwide for trade conversations and trade work to be done with respect to the digital economy, how we can work together, how we can formulate rules, how we can establish common understanding to facilitate the growth of this part of our economy. So that is absolutely a part of the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework that we are working on. But I think what I would like to say with respect to the standalone sectoral approach, however, is that we're actually much more ambitious about what we can accomplish and what we should accomplish with respect to our partners in this region. And so while digital will be an integral part of what we are bringing to the negotiations and the conversation in the Indo-Pacific, it will not be the only one, because digital itself implicates so many aspects of our economy, so many of our stakeholders. It needs to be itself a comprehensive and robust approach to digital economic and trade relations, and also be part of a larger package.
Yeah, and I look forward to working with you on that. One last point. I'd like to discuss a very worrying development that's occurring in Mexico. And Mexico is one of the United States' most important international partners, and it's our closest neighbor to the south. There are many difficult issues that we're trying to deal with in Mexico, but our robust economic relationship should provide a firm foundation to strengthen and stabilize our efforts with an eye toward our future relationship there. But actions over the past year by the government of the current president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, have weakened that bond and are threatening the economic ties of our two nations. Last month, 9 of my colleagues joined me to send a letter to President Biden to address the Mexican government's aggression toward U.S. companies, particularly the arbitrary and punitive actions recently taken against Vulcan Materials. Vulcan Materials is a strategic supplier, particularly to the southeast part of the United States, in terms of how we build our infrastructure. So, Ambassador Tai, we've yet to hear back from President Biden. I know you've weighed in on this topic with the Minister of Economy in Mexico. We can't tolerate our nearest neighbor to the south basically nationalizing American companies' assets. It's extremely damaging to our nation's working relationship, and I hope that you'll commit to taking an immediate action to help address these illegal actions.
Senator Hagerty, are you speaking with respect to Mexico's energy policies, specifically or across the board?
No, I'm speaking to the fact that Mexico has nationalized a piece of a mining operation that is responsible for sending aggregate into the Gulf of Mexico, and basically we're dependent on it, not only in Florida, but all the way through the southeast.
Well, thank you for that clarification. Let me assure you that one message that I hope is conveyed very, very clearly through my participation in this hearing is the commitment of the USTR to the enforcement of all of our trading rights. And I want to assure you that my team is working on all aspects of these issues. And I can assure you that we will not rest. Yeah. Enforcement is a critical piece, and we are working on the challenges that we have with Mexico.
Yeah, I appreciate your diligence there. I've heard also strongly from the energy community as well that this is also an issue.
Thank you, Senator Hagerty.
Thank you.
Senator Feinstein would be next, but this is her birthday, so we're going to give her